this back up. You look so scary when you walk across the... Please don't! Hi guys, hello and welcome to my cozy corner of the internet. My name is Chelsea Deanne and I am a paranormal investigator who likes to tell ghost stories. Wow. So, I had a birthday yesterday as I'm recording this, and I thought in celebration of my birthday, we could talk about my personal favorite ghost story of all time, which is the Sallie house in Atchison, Kansas. So once upon a time, there used to be this show on Discovery Channel called A Haunting, and it was my favorite. I watched it obsessively growing up. And they actually did a special on this house once, and it was just the scariest episode to me. It was the scariest story. I thought it was crazy, and I've been obsessed ever since. I've read books, I've watched movies isn't the right word, but like just anything about it I've watched probably, and I've always just had a soft spot for it. Like, I drove through Atchison on my way to my first ever official paranormal investigation, and I remember we drove past a sign for the Sallie house, and I was like, oh my god, we have to go! And we didn't. And then I looked into how much it costs to stay there, and it's stupid expensive. So that's probably not happening anytime soon. But in the meantime, we can talk about it. Why not? Whatever. It's my fucking birthday. Yeah. So it's a surprise, we're talking about the Sallie house in Atchison, Kansas. Wow. So let's just talk about it, I guess. So Atchison is actually said to be the most haunted town in the whole state of Kansas. This place prides itself on its paranormal activity. I don't actually know why Atchison specifically is so congested with paranormal activity, but they've got a lot of spots around there that are like crazy. I think the McIntyre Villa is also in Atchison. Or is it in Abilene? It's either in Abilene or Atchison. I'm pretty sure it's in Atchison. Anyway, but yeah, they're like really into their haunted history. There's signs all over town pointing you to different haunted locations. Their tourism website is like 90% dedicated to their haunted places. And they're just like really into it. They do haunted tours all throughout the city, and it's cool. I don't know, it's cool. But the Sallie house is by far their most well-known location. It is this really kind of unassuming little house. It's a 2-story white home with brick columns out front. It's really cute, honestly. It's a cute house. And in March of 1993, for Tony and Deborah Pickman, it seemed like the perfect place to live. So they signed a lease, and they spent a few weeks just kind of unpacking, making the house a home as best they can. And while they're doing this, they hear some noises here and there, but it's an older home. It was built in the 1800s, so really nothing to think anything crazy of. They don't automatically hear a noise and go, oh my god, ghosts, you know? And plus, they are expecting their first child, so they're very, very busy renovating the upstairs bedroom, one of the upstairs bedrooms, into a nursery for their incoming baby boy. And they were kind of thinking that this was going to be like, not their forever home, but a place that they were going to live for like a long time, because it had plenty of space to grow into, and the location is good. It had like all that kind of good stuff. I've never owned a home, so I don't really know what goes into that. But the first sign that something might be a little quirky with their house was the TV, which had started to turn itself on and off. So the couple would be trying to go to bed, and they'd be like halfway up the stairs, and the TV would turn on. Or they would be watching TV, they're sitting on the couch, and it would just turn off by itself. And they're like, well, it's an old house, it probably has faulty wiring, we're not going to think that much of it. Just kind of like a weird thing to, you know, keep it in the back of your mind to fix later, but it's not a priority, it's just something that's happening. That summer, a couple of months after moving in, Deb gave birth to their son, Taylor, and her sister, Karen, came into town to kind of help out, like, as you do do when someone has their first baby. Or really any baby. You should help people when they have babies. I've seen both of my sister-in-laws have multiple babies, and it's a process. It's a lot of work. But Karen came into town. She's like helping cook meals. She's helping change diapers. She's doing her sisterly duties, if you will. Karen was there for about a week when Tony happened to go by the baby's room, and the girls were downstairs. But Tony went by the baby's room and he saw something odd, which was several toys on the floor arranged in a perfect circle in the center of the room. They were facing outwards towards the room, so they all had their backs to each other. And they're facing out, like, watching the room. He calls out to Karen and Deb and is like, hey, this is weird. Like, why did you do this? This is a weird prank. And they both kind of said, like, we literally haven't even been on that side of the house. So you are messing with us. Obviously. Because who else would have done this? They kind of go back and forth. The three of them come to the agreement that none of them did it. So they're kind of weirded out. But then I guess Tony's brother lived next door, and he was kind of known to be a prankster. Like, he kind of just messed with people, and they figured he somehow snuck into the house and was responsible for arranging the toys. So with this conclusion in mind that they've come to, this makes them feel better, and they're like, okay, whatever, let's put the toys away, pick them all up. They leave. They don't think anything more of it. They're like, okay, we'll talk to Tony's brother when we see him, and then whatever. Minutes later, literally minutes, one of them goes back up to the room, and all of the toys are back on the floor. They are arranged in a perfect circle in the center of the room, facing outwards. Now they're freaked out. So all of them, including Deb's sister, slept in the same room that night because they didn't want to be by themselves, because what the hell? Karen ended up leaving pretty soon after this. She was like not about it. And Tony and Deb wanted to know what was going on. Like, basically Karen had been scared away, more or less. And they're like, okay, what the hell's going on? They're still married to this theory that it was Tony's brother, so they had him over. And they were like asking him, you know, how are you getting in and out of the house so quickly? How are you doing it without us noticing? Why are you doing this? Like, what? This is weird. Like, why are you breaking into our house? And Tony's brother was like, I literally don't know what you're talking about. So they like told him what was going on, and he told them that he was not even home the night that happened. Well, Tony's brother like sees how stressed out Tony is about this situation, and he's like, yo, you don't think that your house is haunted, do you? And he starts giving him shit. Like, he starts making fun of him, and he kind of pulls a Zach Bagans, and he's making fun of the idea of there being ghosts, and he's like, if there's any spirits in here, make yourself known. You won't do it, no balls. Blah, blah, blah. And as he's doing this, there is a toy that's sitting on the chair on the other side of the room, and that sucker flies off the chair. Okay? Like, completely on its own. Nothing touched it. Nothing was near it. It didn't fall. It flew. And I've seen something like this. So it's, I can tell you, unsettling. Not a great time. Don't love it. So that was good enough for them. The brother dipped, and Tony and Deb grabbed their baby and ran out of the house. They are in the process of putting said baby into the car, which is a lot to do, I've been told. And as he's like bent over strapping the baby into the car seat, he feels a very sharp stinging sensation on his back. He said it felt like a bee sting, so that's kind of what he assumed it was. I mean, it was summer, like that's not outside the realm of what you would logically assume. So he was like, weird, don't like it, uncomfortable, gotta go. So they end up driving to Tony's parents' house, and when they got there, Tony's back was still bugging him. Which would have been a really good pun if he'd actually been stung by a bee. But spoiler alert, not a bee. When Deb lifted up her husband's shirt to see what this sting was, she saw 3 very deep scratches down her husband's back. And they looked like fingernail scratches, which I'm very familiar with working in special education. I get scratched quite a bit. I know what they look like. They're very distinctive. This was enough evidence for Tony that not only was there, in fact, something in their house, but whatever it was not pleasant. So they're kind of like trying to weigh their options and figure out what their move is gonna be moving forward. And they very quickly realize that they don't really have options. They couldn't move because they're in a lease and they can't afford to break it. And they have a baby. And those things are expensive. So you can't just like fuck the money and decide to go, you know? And even if they could break the lease, they have nowhere to go. Like, there's not other places renting that they can take. They can't live with Tony's parents. Like, what are they going to do? So they go back to the house. Like, I would have waited till morning at least, but whatever. It's not my house. Not my job. Not my life. They go back to the house, and sometime afterwards, they talk to Tony's brother again, who is not a skeptic anymore. He's very much like, okay, there's ghosts in this house. So Tony's brother has the bright idea that maybe they should call in a psychic to the home, and he knows someone who knows someone or whatever, and they can try to figure it. He can get somebody in this house to figure out what the hell's going on. So Tony's like, no. He goes, no, not about it. Deb is all for it, and they go back and forth, right? 3 days later, a psychic medium comes to the house. They decide to do it. They all sat down in the living room and they talked about some of the activity that they'd been experiencing. And the psychic was like, take me to the nursery. I get real sassy when I talk about psychics. I'm not convinced, I'll say. That's not true. I do believe people have sensitivities. I do believe people can see, hear, whatever. However, I also think that a lot of people will exploit the grief and the troubles of other humans any chance they get. So that's just where I stand. And I don't mean to be a sassafras when I talk about the psychic, but I probably will be. Sorry. Anyway, she says, take me to the nursery. They do. They go upstairs. But she says that she can feel like very strong energy. And she starts kind of having like a weird reaction. So Tony has this camera and he starts taking pictures to catch evidence of what the psychic is feeling. So like when she starts behaving oddly, he's taking pictures of and around her. And then this lady is drawn to one particular toy and she like reaches out and touches it. And as she touches it, she gets a vision of the past. Okay. And she like starts to lose her breath and she's choking and she's like, there's a spirit in here and it does not want us here and we have to leave. So they do. They head out. But Tony was like, takes a picture. As they're heading back downstairs, the psychic kind of freezes up again and she senses something and she's like, take a picture at the top of the stairs. So Tony turns around, he takes a picture. And then the psychic is like at the bottom of the stairs looking up and she starts talking to a spirit. And the spirit that she sees is a very young girl. She says her name is Sallie, that she's 6 or 7 roughly, and that she died in the house. So the psychic is kind of like, well, Sallie, like, why are you still hanging out here? And Sallie tells her that it's her job to protect the baby, and that's what she's doing. What I really don't like is the phrasing that was used, and that's that Sallie felt that baby Taylor was hers to protect. And I just really don't like the idea of a spirit feeling ownership over a person ever, but especially a baby. Like, no thanks. And like, considering some of the reigning theories about this house, it's like double bad, but we'll get into that. So anyway, the psychic was like, okay, so you're protecting the baby. why are you hurting Tony? Why are you hurting baby's dad? And Sallie said that not only is it her job to protect Taylor, but she is going to do it no matter what, no matter who. She is going to do anything to protect him, even from his own parents. Again, this is an immediate no. Immediately. No. Bye, Sallie. But Deb, bless her heart, thinks that this is really sweet. And she starts to think of Sallie as kind of this guardian angel for her son. So she asks the psychic, what happens if I buy some toys? What if I buy some toys for Sallie and I set them out and they're for her? And the psychic was like, that would make Sallie feel really loved and welcomed. That's a great idea. We love it. But Tony was not thinking the same thing. He is not getting the same vibe as Deb, like, at all. He is thinking they shouldn't do anything to make her feel welcome. She's not welcome. And they definitely just need to not encourage any sort of activity or, like, interact with her anymore, because he still feels like this he still feels like this energy is dark, it's malicious, it's evil. So a couple days later, Deb goes out shopping and she ends up buying toys for Sallie. And on this same errands run, she gets the camera roll developed, which included the pictures that Tony had taken during the psychic's visit. When Deb looked at the pictures, she got her first inkling that something wasn't right. She said the pictures took all of the energy out of her and that she nearly fell to her knees. They looked horrid. They gave her this feeling of dread and fear, and she just didn't know what to do. So she showed the pictures to Tony, and in several of the pictures, there were these weird mists and figures that showed up. The one that scared Tony the most was the one that he'd taken of the top of the stairs when he'd been directed by the psychic. And in this picture, there was a wispy mass floating above the steps. Despite her initial reaction to the pictures, Deb actually continued to insist that it was just Sallie. It's just Sallie. She's fine. She's harmless. We don't care about her. Well, we care about her, but we don't, like, care about her. You know? Like, we care about her in a kind of way, but not in, like, a... I don't know. You get it. Whatever. I don't care. So... She thinks that Sallie is just this little girl and she's so sweet and she has to be good if she wants to look out for Taylor, and she just really wants to make sure that this little girl feels comfortable and welcome in the home. Tony does not agree. Well, it's a recurring theme that we will continue to see. He's not about it. So he insisted on moving Taylor temporarily out of the nursery and into him and Deb's bedroom with them. He thinks that his wife is not taking the haunting seriously, and that she's, like, blinded kind of by maternal instinct and wanting to look out for this little girl. But he does not think this is a little girl. He's, like, evil. Evil. Not a little girl. If it isn't a little girl, evil little girl. After Taylor was moved out of the nursery, the house actually went quiet for weeks. And the Pickmans kind of fell into this sense of security. Deb's sister came back to visit. This time she brought her husband, and they're kind of chilling. One night they have Taylor put down to bed, and the four of them are kind of sitting around in the living room. They're drinking wine, they're chatting, they're just chilling out. They're having a good time. And then they hear something over the baby monitor. It sounds like a little voice whispering into the monitor. They couldn't make out what it said. It was just kind of like one of those, you know? And then it goes quiet. They tried to explain it away, but now the mood has just shifted and it's gotten spooky. So Deb decides it's the perfect time to show Karen, her sister, and her husband the pictures that had been taken in the home. And she's, like, introducing them. She's going, like, this is Sallie. She's our house ghost. She's a little girl. She's Taylor's guardian angel. We love her. She's great. she kind of is just like, here's these pictures, bye. And then she and Tony go to finish the dinner, and she leaves Karen and her husband to keep like flipping through the pictures. And as they're doing so, there's a toy. Just like there was a toy last time. There is a toy. It is sitting on a chair. It burst into flames. It burst into flames. It caught on fire by itself. It fucking self-immolated. Spontaneously combusted. So, obviously, everyone kind of starts freaking out, and Tony is able to put the fire out, but this really, really freaked him out. Understandably. He's, like, you know, he's thinking, like, well, if this ghost can start fires at will, what's stopping it from burning this whole place down the next time it gets mad? Like, what are we doing? This is not a good time. And Deb's like, it's an isolated incident. It's fine. It's never gonna happen again. And then, once again, the house goes quiet. For weeks. I should mention that during this whole thing, Tony is working the graveyard shift. So he gets home from work in the morning. And one morning, he gets home, he's making himself some food in the kitchen, and he sees something out of the corner of his eye. And when he turns to look, instead of the something, like, vanishing, as usually happens when you see something out of the corner of your eye, he comes face to face with a full-blown apparition of a little girl. She wore a white skirt and a bow in her hair, and she just kind of stood there and then disappeared. So Tony freaks, obviously. He goes running upstairs. He's yelling for Deb. He's like all out of breath and panicking, and he's like, you know, one of those. And Deb is like, what's going on? What's happening? What's wrong? And finally he catches his breath and he's like, I saw her. I saw Sally. And Deb was jealous. So jealous. Oh my God. She's so jealous. She's like, I buy her toys. I talk to her. I love her. That's my ghost. Why is she showing herself to you? You don't even like her. And she's like, not scared at all. She's just so intense. She's like, I have to see her. She's showing herself now. I need to see her. So she gets she's very determined. She's like, I'm gonna see this Sally character. But instead, once again, the house goes quiet. Like, silent. No apparitions, no noises, no fires, no movement, no nothing. For months. And rather than enjoying this, because you'd think it'd be peaceful to have your house not attacking you. But I will say, I grew up in a haunted house. We can talk about that another day if you want to. When the things stop happening, it's almost worse. Because when they are happening, you kind of fall into a rhythm with it. You're like, you can't predict what's going to happen, but you can predict that something's going to happen. And when the somethings don't happen and you're anticipating them, it's worse. Because then now it's unexpected. Do you know what I mean? Like, the expected is the unexpected, but then when nothing happens, it's like this waiting game of like, what's going to happen next? When is it going to happen? Is it saving up its energy to do something worse? And that's kind of the feeling that they were having. Well, the feeling Tony's having, anyway, because Deb was like, oh my God, did Sally go away? Did we scare her? Did we make her mad? Is she gone? What's happened? Like, in her mind, I think it was kind of like, this was her little girl. And now she's gone. And what can she do to get it back? You know? And when it did come back, it kind of was like that. Like, it was worse. It was so much worse. And poor Tony is just getting all of it. Like, Deborah wants it so bad. She wants the activity. She wants to experience something. She wants Sally. But it all is going after Tony. So one night, Tony's trying to sleep, and he gets yanked out of bed by his wrist. Like, something grabs his wrist and pulls him so hard that he just about falls out of bed. He could feel hands like wrapped around him, gripping him so tightly that it hurt. And he yells out, and it woke Deb up. And he's like trying to tell her, like, something just pulled my arm. And she's like, She was kind of trying to explain it away. It not in like a ghosts aren't real kind of way, but like in our ghost wouldn't do that kind of way. And she's like, well, you're really stressed out. You're not getting enough sleep. You probably had a bad dream. And he goes, girl. And he holds his wrist up. And there is like full blown handprints around his wrist that were red and blistered as if they'd been burnt into his skin. So Deb believed him, but now she is confused. Like this doesn't match with what she has experienced. This doesn't match with her reality and what she has come to know and what she's been told. So she like doesn't understand how this little girl would be able to like muster up enough energy to pull a full-grown man out of bed, to leave that kind of mark on his skin. And she also couldn't understand what the motive would have been, because they're not Taylor's not in danger. The baby's not being threatened. So why is Sallie going after Tony like this? So this kind of shook her a little bit. And she thinks Sallie must be mad. So she's like, well, we've got to appease her. We've got to make things right. And she still really wants Sallie to like show herself to her. So she sets out a bunch of toys in the nursery, and she kind of calls out and she goes, Sallie, this is your house too. We want you to feel comfortable. We want you to feel welcome. These toys are just for you. You and you only get to play with them. These are your toys. And I just want you to feel safe and loved and know that you are welcome in this home. Don't ever do that. I don't think there's anything wrong with like living peacefully with your ghosts. And I mean that in terms of like the spiritual way and in like the ghost of your past kind of way. Okay, let's get deep for a second. I think there's nothing wrong with living in peace with your ghosts. I think there's nothing wrong. I love to leave gifts when I go investigate. But I am very, very vocal. I am very firm in my boundaries, and that these can be yours. These are great. I would love if you interact with us. I invite you to interact with us. You are not welcome with me. You can't come home with me. You cannot attach to me. You can't do anything. And then to go into your house and be like, be my ghost. It's like, girl, that's like rule number 1. Don't do that. But she doesn't know. Not her fault. But it got worse after that, as things will do. They got worse for Tony, because they're gonna. And so he would like try to lay down and go to bed, and he would hear whispering right in his ear. But it didn't sound like a kid. It was not Sallie. Or was it? But it was the sound of 3 adults all talking at the same time right in his ear. Then one day he's just laying there and the bed starts to shake. And it started little, and then it got like worse and worse and worse and more violent. And it's just like throwing him back and forth. And then as this is happening, the apparition of an adult woman appeared in the bedroom. And so he jumps up, he jumps out of bed, he's going to try to leave the room. And as he's crossing the room towards the door, that door slammed shut in his face and shut him in the room. After this, Tony became very affected by the home. He had a very noticeable change in his demeanor. He became short-tempered. He started to pick fights with Deb all the time. The couple started arguing constantly, and he started to have thoughts of violence, specifically towards Deb. And he had never had thoughts like this before. He had never, ever, ever been a violent man. And he was head over heels for Deb. He was so in love with her and would never want to hurt her until now, until this house, until all of this starts happening. So he really doesn't know what to do. He doesn't want to tell Deb about these thoughts because she's going to think he's crazy. And they're desperate, you know? He's desperate. So the Pigmans end up calling the original psychic medium back to their house. And this time, the psychic goes straight for Sallie. She calls out to her immediately and is like, what's up? What's going on? What's the sitch? And instead of reaching Sallie like she intended, she reaches an adult woman. A very, very powerful energy. She's just like not giving anything at all. And she's like, no, I'm not going to talk to you. Whatever. So they ended up getting in contact with Sallie. And Sallie explained that this spirit, this adult woman, was the one that was causing all of the harm in the house. She was angry and she's powerful and she has all of this like ability and she's causing problems, and now Sally's getting blamed for it. So the psychic really, really didn't know what to do about this. She was kind of like, well, this is outside the realm of my expertise. This is above my pay grade. We're gonna have to this one's gonna go up to corporate, okay? So they decide to elevate it to someone else. And she's like, well, I know this paranormal investigation team. They'll probably be able to help you out better than I can. And I'll get you in contact with them. And Tony goes, no, girl, we're good. I don't want it. No, thank you. Because this is a small town. People are going to talk. If they find out that I have a paranormal investigation team, if they find out I have ghost hunters in my house, they're going to think I'm cuckoo loco crazy. So, no. And like, I don't know if y'all know much about small towns. I'm from a small town. People yap. And they're in your business so much. And it's like, oh, did you hear that so-and-so did this? Did you hear about this? Did you know that Deborah's having an affair? I don't know why I said Deborah. Deborah is actually a character in this story. Deborah wasn't having an affair. I should specify that. It's like that. And especially in a small town in the Midwest, just largely, generally speaking, it's a Christian community. And if you are like, hey, I got a fucking ghost in my house, and you're a Christian, and they're like, ghosts aren't real, and you're gonna be like, you're going against God, and did you know that Tony's crazy, and he thinks that there's ghosts in his house, and me. It's gonna be one of those. And he's like, no, I'm good, I don't want it. However, he genuinely believed that the haunting was of a demonic nature, and he didn't know what to do. So ultimately he was like, okay, fine, bring the ghost hunters in, whatever, do it. At least then we can figure out what's going on. So he agreed to the investigation, and the team came, and the guy that was leading the investigative team was a world-renowned psychic and paranormal investigator named Peter James. And unlike the first psychic, Peter came into the home and didn't want to know anything. He's like, don't tell me. Don't tell me anything. I'm going to feel the house. And that I can respect. The first thing he said when he walked in the house was he went up to Deb and Tony and he said, do you have a 7-year-old daughter? And they were like, no, why? And Peter told them that when he and the team had pulled up outside, there had been a little girl in the upstairs window just staring. And she wasn't like menacing, she wasn't creepy, she wasn't a ghost. She was just curious. And like a solid little girl. She looked like a little girl being like, what's going on? So he assumed that they had a daughter, and they were like, no. And so he goes, okay. So he goes in, he senses the spirits of 2 people in the home. He senses 2 presences, and he specifically picks up a child and a very, very powerful adult female. We're really rocking in on that one. He goes to the stairs. And he's like standing at the bottom, and he looks up at the top, and he starts talking to a little girl named Sallie. Okay? Introduces her. She's like, hi, I'm Sallie. Like, he walks in, doesn't know anything about the house. He goes up to the top of the stairs, and he goes, hi, Sallie. And Deb's like, yes. And Tony was like, not about it. But whatever. Peter, though, very cautious. And he's kind of like, okay. Like, okay, so we have this little girl. We have this adult female, but like something's weird here. He feels heavy. There's a heaviness to this house. So he ends up going upstairs. He goes into Tony and Deb's bedroom, and right away he goes, The adult female is in this room with us right now. This is her spot. This is her place. This is where she hangs out. And this is where she does not want us to be. So we gotta go. And he was pushed backwards by a rush of energy. And at the same time as this happens, Tony gets this like crazy pain in his back. And they like go over, they look at Tony, they lift his shirt up. 2 sets of scratches down his back, all the way down. And they're kind of looking at it. They're like, oh my God, look at these scratches. As they're looking at his back, no one's touching him. They're looking at his back. And they watch as another set of scratches appears right before their eyes. So, wild. But, whatever. I guess Peter has some great advice for us. And that's, you just can't be scared. You can't be scared of the spirits. You gotta tell him who's boss. And Tony's kind of like, all right. Well, how do I make him stop scratching me? Because I'm a little scared. I'm not gonna lie to you. And I'm just gonna say, if I had shit ripping up my back every day, I'd be kind of scared too. And frankly, I don't need a lecture about it. Do you see this? Do you see what's happening? Why? How am I not scared of that? But whatever. Okay, so Peter and his team go outside. They investigate the whole house. They go outside. And as they're out there, Peter looks back at it, right? He looks back at the house and he sees something in the upstairs window, and it is the woman. And he's like, we're gonna talk. You and me, we're talking now. And she's like, no, I don't want to talk to you. And he's like, no, we're gonna talk. And she's like, no. Okay, fine. So she lets him in finally, I guess. And he sees a vision of another century, right? He sees the woman acting as a servant. And she is a servant to a doctor who owns the home. And also, she's his mistress. But they had to keep their relationship secret because she was a person of color. He was not. That's not allowed. So they're like, no, it's not, nothing's happening. It's crazy. What are you talking about? Well, guess what? They have a child. They have a love child. Their name is Sallie. It's a little girl. She's 7 years old. Wow. Look at how these things connect. So it turns out, according to Peter, Sallie died of pneumonia and she died in the house. And that's how it came to be. It's mom and it's Sallie. And it's Sallie and her mom. I'm going to take us out of the story for a minute. Because, so this was Peter's version of events. But in literally every other telling of this story, it's always that Sallie died of appendicitis. The more popular version of the story is actually that Sallie wasn't the doctor's child, but was just a random little girl whose mom had brought her by the house and was like, please help me, my daughter's dying. Why do I just do that voice for everybody? But she's like, hey, something's wrong, help. And so the doctor looked at her and was like, this girl has appendicitis. We need to operate on her immediately because her appendix is about to burst or had burst or something. And so he started operating on her before the anesthetic kicked in. So the little girl was awake and feeling everything, and she ended up bleeding out on the table, which is very sad. And in this version, she is here in this house. She is haunting this home because she believes that she was tortured to death by this man that she didn't know because she had experienced so much pain at his hands, even though he was just trying to save her life. But those are the 2 versions. But anyway, Peter recommended a cleansing, and he told Tony, this is your house. You set the rules. You are the boss, and you need to tell these guys, these spirits, that either they get with the program or they get the fuck out. So Deb was like, yeah, okay, sounds good. Because she really wanted to stay in the house. She really wanted to coexist with Sallie. She was kind of indifferent to the woman. But now she has an explanation. She knows that Sallie is her little girl. This little girl, this safe spirit. She's so sweet. She's the guardian angel, right? And then we just have to deal with this woman who doesn't like us. But she was very convinced that they could reach a mutual understanding and share the home together and coexist in harmony. Tony, on the other hand, didn't want to stay in the house. And just generally, he's not having a good time. He's not doing so hot. He said that the longer that they stayed in the home, the heavier he felt and the darker everything got. He had been having these thoughts of violence, but now he was like kind of losing himself in these visions of fighting with Deb, and then the fights would escalate and he'd end up hurting her. And he was like, these were like really detailed like daydreams that he was having, and this was like completely out of his control. He's not fantasizing about hurting his wife, right? He's like, something is manipulating him and making him have these thoughts, and things are getting really, really scary. And he still doesn't tell Deb about it because he doesn't want to scare her. But finally, it got so bad, he just kind of broke. And he was like, he goes to Deb and he straight up was just like, hey, we have to get out of here, because if we don't, someone is going to get hurt, and I'm really afraid that it's going to be you. And Deb was like, huh? So he finally admitted to her everything that had been going on, and these thoughts that he'd been having, and these feelings that he'd been having. And he told her, like, I think that the spirits are mentally affecting me. I think that they are controlling me and my emotions, and we need to get out of this house because something bad is gonna happen. So finally, Deb was like, oh, shit. Like, okay. So she finally takes him seriously and agrees to start looking for new houses the next day. Well, while Tony was trying to sleep, Deb was up looking at newspaper ads for housing. And they're like on their separate floors, right? Tony can't sleep. He tries and tries and tries. He cannot fall asleep. And instead, he gets overtaken by this very dark feeling, and all he can think about is how much he wants to go find Deb and hurt her. And he actually kind of gets overtaken by this, and he gets up out of bed and he starts to go downstairs to find her. And as he's going towards the stairs, he is shoved very forcefully from behind by something, by nothing, and it pushes him almost down the stairs. And this kind of snapped him out of it, but it also was like, I'm done. I will not be in this house anymore. So he goes downstairs, he yells at Deb, he goes, get the baby, we're done, we're out of here. And that's what they did. They grabbed the baby, they left the house, and they never came back. As soon as they moved out of this house, the heaviness and the dark thoughts and the violence and the horribleness went away and never returned. Completely cleared up. Since the Pickmans, I believe the house has stood empty. It's owned, but I don't think anyone since the Pickmans have lived there. I could be wrong about that. But it, as it stands now, it is open for paranormal investigations. People that do spend the night here will report that their investigative equipment will malfunction, fail, totally drain a battery. They'll see objects move, people will get scratched and bruised. They feel cold spots, physical touching. People who have animals the animals just won't go in the nursery. There's all sorts of shit. But I want to talk about the facts, okay? So, the actual house. The actual history of the house. It really, really did belong to a doctor. That was true. It was built for the Finney family in the mid-1800s. It did end up in the hands of a Dr. Charles Finney, who practiced medicine at an office nearby. There are persisting rumors that the doctor did see patients in his home, but there are no official records that can verify that. It wasn't uncommon for someone to like go to the doctor's when you only have one doctor in town, right? There's no hospitals. It's the 1800s. Maybe early 19s by that point. But like it was early days. There's one doctor in town. Something goes wrong in the middle of the night, you're going to go to the doctor's house. It makes sense. So it's not unheard of that he would have taken patients in his home. But speaking of official records, when it comes to the existence of a Sallie, nothing can be verified. There's a show that I used to watch called A Haunting, and in the episode on which they covered this, they did claim to have found the grave of Sallie. They claimed that they found records proving that she had in fact died in the Finney home. However, in my own research and my own looking, everything that I have found, every other source that I looked at, says exactly the opposite, that no Sallie has ever been found to exist in relation to the home in any form. Which actually leads us to one of the most popular theories about the home, which is that Sallie is not a little girl. but a demon. There is a pretty well-known belief, it's pretty supported within the paranormal community, that children are not common as spirits, I'd say. A lot of people say that children cannot be spirits or can't be ghosts at all because they're too innocent to have things tying them to the mortal plane, so it wouldn't make sense for them to be there. I think that's bullshit. I think that people don't give kids enough credit. Kids are humans, you know. I work with kids. I have my opinions. They're people. They have emotions, they have thoughts, they have big emotions. They don't know what the hell to do with their feelings. They don't know how to process their feelings. They have to be taught how to do that. So if they're having big feelings, that's what people think causes people to be ghosts, is big feelings. So it makes perfect sense that a children would be a ghost. But anyway, that's my opinion. So I don't believe in that theory that children can't be ghosts at all. I will say I do think it's not as common. And I do believe very firmly in the other half of that theory, which is that malignant entities disguise themselves as children in order to gain sympathy and trust. And I 100% believe that. And so I'm not going to sit here and say that ghosts can never, or I'm not going to sit here and say that children can't be ghosts and that you can't have child spirits. I will say, unless you really, really, really know what you're dealing with, proceed with caution. But that's a rule with all spirits in general. Anyway, all that to say, there is a reigning theory that Sallie was not a little girl, but she was a demon or an otherwise negative entity, and they masqueraded themselves as a little girl in order to be invited into the home, which is why I say you should never do that. You should never invite a spirit in that way, in the way in which she did. But by interacting with her and explicitly saying, you are welcome in this home, you are welcome to interact with us in our home, that enabled this entity to attach itself to Tony and to target him. And that's kind of what people think Sallie is. And that's kind of what I believe Sallie is. I've never been there. I've never interacted with him directly. Just from an outside perspective, I think that the powerful female entity is probably more akin to what Sallie really is. And Sallie as a little girl was just kind of a front. But I don't know. I've never been. I might come up with a completely different conclusion when I finally go. But I have been yapping for a very long time, so I will stop. But I lied. I'm not going to stop just yet because I do want to say one more thing, which, if possession and demonic infestation in the way the Catholic Church goes about it is to be believed, the first stage of demonic possession actually starts with infestation. That's going to be your regular haunting stuff. That's going to be things moving, sounds, seeing something out of the corner of your eye, shit like that, right? Then it moves to oppression, which is emotional manipulation. That's when you see dark thoughts, demeanor changes, things like that, which we saw with Tony. The next step beyond that, I can't remember if there's 4 stages or 3 stages, but a following stage is full-blown possession. And it seemed like he really might have been on the way to something like that, if you believe in possessions. And people that have stayed overnight allege that they've been briefly possessed within the home. I don't mean to giggle. It just, whenever I think of something like that, it makes me think of Zach Bagans and all of his investigations being like, I got possessed. Oh my god, I was possessed. It made me really mad. Did you ever watch that documentary that he made called Demon House about the house in Gary, Indiana? Because I just watched that. I finally just watched it because I was going to do something about the demon house for whatever. It doesn't matter. I finally just watched that. And that scene where he goes up behind a guy and he's like it made me laugh so hard. Oh my god, it was so cringy. He just he's so far away from this guy and he's like squaring up at him, and that's all he does. He goes and then walks away. It's just silly. But no, he likes to say that he gets possessed a lot, and he liked to that was an alleged possession of his. Anyway. Oh my god. Okay. I have been talking for a very long time. I'm going to stop. I'm going to shut up. Thank you for bearing with me. If you made it to the end of this video, God bless you. You're my best friend. I don't know how to end these. I'm new here. But thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed. If you did, please like this video. That is still a thing. I don't care. Like it if you want. It would make me happy. I'd be like, oh my god, they like the video. What? If you want to leave your own theories about what you think Sallie is, or if you've ever been to the Sallie house, oh my god. Anyway, if you have your own opinions, I'd like to know what they are, because I only know my own. And I'm trying to make my mom read this book about the Sallie house so that we can talk about it, because I want someone to talk about this stupid case with, and she won't. She like has the book, but hasn't read it, and she's had my book for a while now, and I'm like, hey, shit or get off the pot. Give me my book back, or read it so we can talk about it. Anyway, okay, Anyway, I would love to chat in the comments. If you want to see more videos from me, you can hit the subscribe button, which would be really cool. Because I am going to start uploading videos from my actual investigations here eventually. I have some stuff in the works here. But anyway, yeah, okay, I'm done. Thank you so much. I love you. Bye.
Wow.